All right, nerds, the end is nigh. Just kidding. However, the end of dry January is right around the corner, so we will have today's episode on, finally, how to make non-alcoholic and de-alcoholized wine. And then on the 29th, we'll definitely have one last dry hurrah about something that I haven't yet decided. And then we will get back to our world tour. So how do they make non-alcoholic and de-alcoholized wines? Well, you have the sparkling grape juice option, which we kind of talked about in the first video. And honestly, Welch's really does make like a mean sparkling grape juice, as long as you understand that it's going to taste like grape juice. And it's a sugar bomb. And as long as you know those things, you might really like that as an option. I have definitely used it for previous, dry spells in my life. But this time, I don't know, I just couldn't handle the sugar this go around. So for most of the current non-alcoholic de-alcoholized wines out there and that we've been discussing, these all started as, drumroll please, actual wine that then underwent the processes that we discussed in the previous two videos to make wine, and that of course is why we had those two videos. So now you have your vat or barrel or barrique or tank of wine that most likely has anywhere from 9 to 14% alcohol. I haven't seen much in the way of like de-alcoholized or non-alcoholic, say, Zinfandels. So and this is 100% a guess, but my guess is that most wines that will become de-alcoholized don't get up to those higher, like 14, 5, 15% levels. So anyway, we've got this wine, now what? The first and I believe oldest method we'll discuss is vacuum distillation. So you put the liquid into a vacuum chamber and you lower the boiling point of the alcohol. So now we simply boil off the alcohol, approximately 86 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. How a vacuum lowers the boiling point has to do with vapor pressure and like other chemistry that we won't be covering right now. I'll try to link some articles in the description. If you want to get really nerdy, definitely read those. But the important point is we lower the temperature for boiling off the alcohol because if you were to simply, say, boil wine on your own stove, you would have too much flavor change and you likely would not enjoy the resulting beverage. Our next method, the spinning cone column method, stems from a similar idea for the removal of alcohol but has a bonus feature we'll get to in just a moment. So there's like this long spinning cone column into which goes wine and out of which comes a thin like wine spray. It's centrifugal force, so it just sprays it out, all of this under vacuum. So now you have the same vacuum effect, but also increased surface area of the wine. So the alcohol extraction happens at an even lower boiling point. Or at least that's my understanding of this process. The bonus that's important with this spinning cone column method, and I only understand this sort of abstractly, the people conducting this process are able to capture a lot of the aromas coming off the wine at that first like starting spin. So after they've removed the alcohol, they can sort of, put the aromas back. Like I said, conceptually, it makes sense. I'm not a chemist, so the practice of it eludes me slightly. This is obviously a more involved process and uses different equipment, so while this practice is growing in popularity, it does tend to be more expensive. Our final option is reverse osmosis. So RO is just the diffusion of a liquid through a permeable membrane, which sounds really scientific. Basically, you separate the molecules from other substances. In this case, we are separating tannin, color, flavor, aromatics, alcohol, and water. Remove the alcohol, add back into the liquid the tannins, the colors, the flavors, and the aromatics. Now here's the catch. By and large, at least in the US, these wines can be labeled as non-alcoholic. However, if you want to be entirely accurate, you would say these wines have been de-alcoholized because they had alcohol and then that alcohol was removed. This is especially important because legally a non-alcoholic wine can still have up to 0.49% ABV, alcohol by volume. This just makes room for lingering traces of alcohol that may remain after the aforementioned processes. But to be a truly non-alcoholic wine with zero alcohol, the most logical way and the easiest way is you just don't start with alcohol in the first place. So now we're full circle back to our sparkling grape juice. So There are a lot of really excellent non-alcoholic spirits and cocktails on the market. Like, I personally am a big fan of the Curious Elixir options. The Kin Euphorics Bloom is very refreshing. I've been drinking that a lot lately. I just picked up the Gia, I think Ghia, sumac and chili, amazing. We had it, in fact, I'm loving this growing social trend of dry bars and dry bottle stores, which is where we got the Gia. There's tons of amazing options out there. Legally at this point, I think probably I have to mention, like, I'm not endorsed by any of these beverages. I'm not making money. I'm just sharing what I have tried, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, and if you do, that's great. I'll continue trying things, and I'll continue sharing what I have tried. Back to the point, I think the struggle with wines is going to be the impact the alcohol levels have on the body and the mouthfeel of the beverage. Some of the heaviness in the mouth comes from that alcohol by volume. Especially if you're getting deep into wine tasting, you may be looking for a particular balance of alcohol to complement the acid, the fruit levels, and in red wines, the tannins. So knowing that this won't be there going into it will likely set you up for a much more enjoyable experience, because you know you won't be getting an exact recreation. You can still enjoy the beverage as a beverage, but maybe not as an exact wine substitute. I hope that kind of makes sense. With all that in mind, let's give this Riesling that I mentioned, I think in the last video, a go. A weird choice, I know, considering that I believe I have stated I am not a Riesling fan, but I have my reasons, so let's give this one a try. I do like that they stuck with this nice tall bottle shape that I come to expect from my Rieslings. Ooh, or that a little heavy. Okay, good color. Smells shockingly like a Riesling. What I was hoping to do with that excessive swishing, and I'm kind of still waiting for, was see how well we're doing with the acid. Because my theory, I think I mentioned in the last video, somehow the acidity that I'm expecting has been lacking, I think, in all of these de-alcoholized wines. And there's a little bit of salivation. I don't get anything. Sometimes I get acid in the back of my mouth. I'm getting a little bit of salivation, but definitely not as much acid as I would expect from an alcoholic Riesling. That doesn't really make sense based on everything I understand. I don't know what's happening to the acid. I don't know where it's going. But taste-wise, I wouldn't have this in place of a very dry Riesling. Okay, I'm getting a little acidity now, so okay, that's good. Yeah, I wouldn't say this is like a dry Riesling, but if you were looking for sort of an off-dry, not as sweet as grape juice, that's for sure, but not as dry as the Rieslings I prefer. I don't get a lot of the, I think when we did the Riesling video, there was almost a Fruit Loop lime sort of thing going on. I don't get that. It just is a much, well, it's off dry. That's what I can tell you. It's not a good explanation. This is probably, I would say, the Gießen or Gießen, depending on how we're pronouncing these vowels, red might have been my favorite of the four we tried, but I would give this actually probably second place. And then the free red blend, and then that I would not get that sparkling. I'm sorry, I just wouldn't. All right, that wraps up today. I do want to keep doing the dries. We'll keep doing some of these de-alcoholized and non-alcoholic throughout the rest of the NerdVine adventure. If you have recommendations, make them. I'll try to get my hands on some. We can discuss them. And then, I don't know, we'll see what happens next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. Cheers.